but we'll continue. I'm looking 1 Samuel chapter 17 and verse number 4. And there went a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span, roughly 9 foot 6 inches tall. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. One bearing a shield went before him. So this was an awesome sight. Here's this guy, huge as he can be, with a spear that obviously the spear, probably just throwing the spear at him would just kill the guy just if it hit him. But nonetheless, he stands there and he's got this little armor bearer that's kind of standing before him. And so here he comes. And he stood, verse 8, and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye the servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. Amazing how he made the rules he didn't keep, though. You know, of course he wasn't alive to keep them, but we go on. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. And when Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now, David was a son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons, and the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle, and the names of these 3 sons that went out to battle were Eliab the firstborn, and the next unto him was Abinadab, and the third was Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp of thy brethren. And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with his keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. So here they are, they're fighting, the battle's going on here. David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper, the carriage, and ran to the army, and he came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and he spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they had saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have you seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. In other words, they wouldn't have to pay taxes. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab his brother heard when he spake unto the men. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart. For thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another, and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he went for him. He sent for him, I should say. And David said unto Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he is a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. Well, David said, moreover, the Lord hath delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, and he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord be with thee. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put an helmet of brass on his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. David girded his sword upon his armor, and he said to go, for he had not proved it. In other words, he had all this stuff on that Saul gave him, but he didn't. That's how he's not used to fighting this way. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him, and he took his staff in his hand, and he chose 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and he put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, am I a dog, that thou camest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee. And I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. Wow, I like that spirit, don't you? And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted, and he ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag, and he took thence a stone, slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. And so David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran, and stood upon the Philistine, took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley, to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Sharaim, even to Gath and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, and he put his armor in his tent. And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, as thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. And the king said, inquire thou whose son this stripling is. And as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said unto him, Whose son art thou, thou young man? And David answered, I am the son of thy servant Jesse the Bethlehemite. Now I know that was an extended passage, but the truth of the matter is it's a really neat story. And a story that I think that we can use and think about some of the things that we see in this passage to kind of encourage our hearts in the battle that we are facing today. This was not David's first battle, and this is not our first battle in many cases, and it's probably not going to be our last battle. There are more battles that we're going to face in life. This is but one of them. And the truth of the matter is, the battles we face today are preparing us for the battles that God has for us tomorrow, the victories and the triumphs of tomorrow. So we need to fight the battles well today so that we can prepare ourselves for the battles that are yet to come in our life. So let's pray and ask the Spirit of God to help us to just take this and take some lessons to heart here as we fight our battles even today, in a way that God is honored, as David did in the battle that he fought with Goliath. Father, I thank you for this passage, and though it is extended, we do thank you for the truths that you teach us. I'll just cover a few. There's lots of things to say about this particular passage and this particular battle, but I pray, God, that you help us all to realize that we're in a battle right now. We're in a fight. And yet there's victory to be had, but it's to be had in a way. And Lord, you're using these battles to prepare us for your future. We don't know what battles we'll face in the future. We look at this battle and sometimes we can think that this is insurmountable, but in some cases it's not. In many cases it's not. It's just a preparation for what you're going to do in our future. And I pray that you would prepare our hearts for that. And I ask you this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, again, a wonderful thing that we see here. And we see, I guess when you look at a story like this, the little guy beats the big guy. I mean, I think all of us kind of like stories like that, where this is like an insurmountable battle. 9'6" tall guy. And David is just evidently a short, ruddy little guy, cute little kid, almost a teenager. And he goes against this man who's been a warrior from his youth. And it's just one of those amazing things. This is a fight that completely defies the odds. I mean, if you were going to take odds on this particular battle, obviously David would not even rank in this thing. But as we read this, there's a truth that spoke to my heart in this. And one of the truths is, David was but a young man. I mean, by Saul's definition here, Saul says, thou art but a youth. Just a youth. And yet I say, don't despise thy youth. We sang that just a moment ago. Let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of the believers in word, conversation, charity, spirit, faith, and purity. Young people can do amazing things when they trust God. The truth of the matter is, anybody can do amazing things when they trust God. And God puts us in situations where we can do amazing things if we trust the Lord. And so as I look at this David willing to go to fight this 9'6" tall giant of a fellow, a warrior, there's several things I take to heart in this, several things I see. First of all, David was infuriated that one man could intimidate the armies of the living God. Folks, we ought to have a certain allegiance to God, the power of God, the might of God, the almighty God that he is. We see sometimes people stand up or not trust God or even defy God. It ought to do something inside of us that just makes us. It infuriated David. Listen, in verse number 26, and David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine and taketh away the reproach from Israel? I mean, here these two armies go to battle, and this guy stands up and the Israelites run away. One man stands up on the other side, and the whole army, God's entire army, flees and hides. And David sees this, and he's going, what in the world is going on here? And he says here, for who is this circumcised Philistine? I'm still in verse 26. He says that he should defy the armies of the living God. I guess you can call this righteous indignation. I mean, it's obvious he was angered. He was infuriated. He was incensed by the fact that one man can stand up against the entire army and cause them to flee. And these were the armies of the living God. They weren't just fighting in their own strength, at least they shouldn't have been. They had God on their side. And you know, sometimes I hear people complaining, and I hear people say things about what they're facing here, you know, and it's almost like God's not even a part of the battle. Like we're trying to fight this thing in our own strength. We need God. We need to realize God's on our side. You know what? God was on the side of the Israelites. Had they only realized it, David realized it. The rest of the folks didn't seem to realize it. And as we are fighting this battle, one of the things I trust that all of us would see, just like in the fight with David and Goliath, is that God's on our side. We're fighting for God. You know, our neighbors are watching us. People in our workplace are watching us. You know, our family, our unsaved family members are watching us. Our own kids are watching us. How are we fighting this battle? Are we complaining? Are we whining? Are we defeated? Are we discouraged? How are we facing this particular battle? So I see David. He was incensed. He was infuriated. He was angry because he wanted God to be seen strong in this battle. Well, that was the first thing. Secondly, David realized that there was much more at stake than a big guy to defeat. There was a cause to be won. And I think we all need to realize this. It's not just a virus. You know, we're not just facing a virus out there. Is a virus a serious thing? Well, yeah, it's a serious thing. But the truth of the matter is, it's not just about a virus. We have to understand there's a cause here. David says, is there not a cause? Verse 29, David said, what have I done now done? Is there not a cause? What is he saying? He's saying there's a statement that needs to be made here. God's people were paralyzed. They weren't willing to get up and stand up and fight for God's sake. There was a cause to be proven here. There was something to prove for God's sake. Don't we realize who we are? Someone has to answer this guy. It should not be that he stands up and does what he's doing. If no one else will do it, David says, I will do it. And here's a bunch of, his brother, he had 4 brothers out there that were fighting in the battle for Saul. And, you know, I'm sure his brothers were upset with him that he was talking like that. It really made them look little, I suppose, or fearful. But they were fearful. The truth of the matter was they were fearful. But David realized it wasn't just fighting a big guy. There was a cause here. It was the cause of God that was at stake. And I think we all need to come to grips with this, that the cause of God is at stake in what we're facing. In whatever battles we face, it's not just us against them. One of the things that David said when he went before the Philistine is the battle is the Lord's. And we need to understand this. The battle is the Lord's. There's a cause. We are Christians. We're God's children. And this battle is God's battle. And we're fighting in the name of God. There is a cause. There's a statement that we're making in all of this. And so I think we need to realize, as David did, that there's a cause. And so David was angered because of the fact there was reproach upon the name of the Lord, righteous indignation, if you would. David realized that there was something bigger than fighting a big guy or winning a battle with one fellow here. Like I said, this is not just a virus. There's a cause here that all of us need to understand. And then there was an experience. Now, you know what? David was willing to go against this guy because he had previous experience. Now, listen to what he says in verses 32 to 37, because basically Saul is saying, you're just a little guy. You can't fight with this man. He's been a warrior from his youth. I mean, you're going to be toast. There's no way that you can do this. And yet, David had a heart, and David had more in his heart, and he had trust in the Lord, and he knew he was fighting this battle for God's sake. And so here's what David says. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. That's what was happening here. Men's hearts were failing because of this giant that stood up. I wonder how many people's hearts are failing today because of this giant called coronavirus has stood up here. I think a lot of people's hearts are failing. Again, you get on the news and that's what everybody is talking about. Doesn't matter what else is happening in the world, everybody is just overcome by this thing. Should we be concerned? Well, certainly there's concern, but we're shutting down the whole country over this thing. And I understand our government's taking steps to protect us as a people, but at the same time, we need to be careful how we react to this thing. So David says to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Thou art not able to go and fight against this Philistine to fight with you, for thou art but a youth. He is a man of war from his youth." And David said unto Saul, "Thy servant kept his father's sheep." And here's the experience I'm talking about. Previous experience, previous battles. Okay? "Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear and took a lamb out of the flock." So here's David's job, was to protect the sheep under his care. A lion comes by, a bear comes by. That was no light experience. I mean, have you ever faced a lion before? I mean, not the ones in the zoo that can't get out of the cage. Off with the lamb. Didn't let the bear walk off with the lamb. What did he do? He smote him and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me. In other words, okay, now the lion has turned from the sheep, or the bear has turned from the sheep. Now he's going against David. And what happened here? I caught him by his beard and smote him and slew him. You say, how in the world can anybody do that? I don't know. But I would guarantee you, if it was you that did it, it would be an experience that you would never have forgotten. It would not be a mild experience. I mean, I'd be talking about that one for a long time. If I went up against the lion and defeated a lion, or if I went up against a bear and defeated a bear, I mean, that is no minor experience. That's a pretty major deal. It was a battle, a previous battle, that God used David to win. And so he says, "Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them." What did the battles do? The former battles prepared David for a battle that he was now going to face. He had no idea what was going to happen after the lion and the bear. As far as he saw himself, he was just a shepherd. But yet God had more for this guy than just tending sheep. God saw that he was willing to put his life on the line to save his father's sheep. And God had future battles. And by the way, this isn't David's last battle either. David's going to face more battles after Goliath that are even larger perhaps than one man. There's going to be a whole army of people that are going to rise up against David. And David has battles yet to fight. This is all experience that David has. I'm saying, my question I'm answering here is, what encouraged David to go out and fight this battle? Number one, he was incensed because there was reproach upon his God. Number two, there was a cause, and he knew he must answer this cause. Number three, there was experience. He had former experience in other battles that encouraged him because God delivered him in former battles, and God can deliver him in this one. And so, moreover, David, "Lord hath delivered me out of the paw of the lion, and out of the paw of the bear, will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine." And Saul said unto David, "Go, the Lord be with you." What's Saul going to say? I mean, I don't think Saul ever faced a lion or a bear. Saul was not willing to face Goliath. Saul was afraid to face Goliath. And here's a young fella that had some kind of attitude, some kind of spirit, some kind of experience, some kind of cause that he was serving that was so much bigger. What's Saul going to say? Go ahead, the Lord be with you. It was probably a cheap way to say it, but nonetheless, David goes. And then not only was there, I guess you could say, righteous indignation, not only was there a cause, not only was there experience, but there was faith. There was faith. You can't deny this. There was faith as David goes out there. In verses 40 through 47, it says, "And he, being David, took his staff in his hand, and he chose 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and he put them in a shepherd bag which he had, even a scrip, and a sling which was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine." Okay, so David's not waiting for the Philistine to come to him. David goes out, gets the stuff, and he goes out to meet the Philistine. And that's how we have to fight the battle sometimes. No, I'm not saying that you should go out and go ahead and infect yourself with the coronavirus. I'm not saying that. There are other things that we're fighting in the midst of the coronavirus. We're not trying to get you out there, and I think you should do exactly as you're being told as far as keeping yourself from the virus and being infected and infecting others. I think this is a wise thing for us to do. But there are other battles we're facing in this. There are battles of discouragement. There are battles with perhaps your resources and your needs. There are battles with other people around you that are discouraged. Maybe they're losing opportunities. There are other battles in this, not just the virus. We're not just talking about the virus. There are a lot of things that are surrounding this entire scenario that our country is facing here. And so David goes to fight. And the Philistine came on and drew near to David, and the man that bare his shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about, he saw David and disdained him. The Philistine wanted a bigger fight than he had on his hands. So he thought. Well, Goliath thought, what are you talking about? Don't send some little kid out after me. You got to be kidding. Send me Saul. He was head and shoulders above all the men of Israel, seeming like he would be the one that should go to battle. So what happens? When the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, but he was but a youth, ruddy and fair countenance. Kids coming after me. And the Philistine said unto David, am I a dog, that thou comest with me with staves? What do you do? Did you lost your puppy or something like that? What are you doing out here in this battlefield? And what are you doing out here, son? And the Philistine said unto David, come to me, and I will give thy flesh to the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine. So Goliath comes with a taunt. Come over here and I'll show you a thing or two. I'll feed you to the birds of the air. And David answers. David does not back down. He is filled with the faith of God. And David says to him, and said David the Philistine, thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear. You come with all this artillery. You are protected from head to toe. You got your big old sword and shield. You got your little fella running in front of you to protect you in case something comes your way. He says, but I come to you with something more powerful than all that. He says, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. Wow. There's a faith stance right there. David comes in the name of the Lord. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee and take thine head from off thee. And I will give carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth. And here's the thing, listen to what he says, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. There's a cause. David was fighting for the cause of God. He did not want the people of the earth, the enemies of God, to think that God wasn't strong enough to meet this battle. It wasn't an army that was going against this man. It was one little fella who had faith in God. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear. You got all the artillery. I'm coming to you with a sling and a stone. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. So, as I looked at this, and I was reading this morning, and I was thinking about this in regard to our faith and our serving God and our facing this battle that we're facing, and all of the implications and all of the things that have happened because of the battle. People's 401ks, they're disappearing. They're thinking the economy is going to a 10% unemployment like it was back in the early 2000s. There's lots of concern. The stock market, well, even though the stock market took a big jump today of 2,000, or yesterday I think 2,000 points, still it's 8,000 points below where it was, not just a couple, 3 weeks ago. And so there's lots of concern. If the economy stays in this mode, people will have lost all that has been gained in the last several years. And so all of these fears, financial woes and fears and jobs, and am I going to have a job, and am I going to be able to continue doing what I'm doing? We have people that have businesses that are being affected by this. These are all things that are part of this battle. And all of us are in this. And so we need to look to God. We need to realize that there's a cause in all this. God's got something he's doing. There's experience here. God is putting us in this experience for the sake of other battles that we're to face in the future. We don't know what those battles are. David didn't know when he fought the lion and the bear that Goliath was on the menu. Nor did he know about all the other battles he was going to face, even with his own son Absalom. David didn't know all that was going to happen in the future, but he took battle by battle in faith, believing God. And that's what we have to do. We have to face this battle and every battle in faith. We're fighting for the Lord. We're fighting in the name of the Lord. And so let us see victory in Jesus. Let us trust God in these battles. Let's go forward in the name of the Lord, realizing the battle is the Lord's. We are his servants. There is a cause. We're fighting for that cause. We're fighting in that cause. And we want God to be victorious in and through it all. So Connie, if you would come, and I want to sing one more song here, number 413. It's in this book. I'm not sure if you have the book at home, but I think you know the song pretty well. In Canton, the hills of light, ye Christian soldiers rise, and press the battle ere the night shall veil the glowing skies. Against the foaming veils below, let all our strength be hurled. Faith is the victory we know, that overcomes the world. Faith is the victory, faith is the victory, oh glorious victory that overcomes the world. His banner over us, his love, our sword, the word of God. We tread the road, the saints above, with shouts of triumph trod. By faith they like a whirlwind's breath, swept on o'er every field. The faith by which they conquer death is still our shining shield. Faith is the victory, faith is the victory, oh glorious victory that overcomes the world. To him that overcomes the foe, like raiment shall be given. Before the angels he shall know, his name confessed in heaven. Then onward from the hills of light, our hearts with love aflame, will vanquish all the hosts of night in Jesus' conquering name. Faith is the victory, faith is the victory, oh glorious victory that overcomes the world. Well, I trust you'll have a good night tonight. Spend some time in prayer. Take that prayer list and go over some of those things that are on the prayer list. Bring them before the Lord in faith and just ask God to do. You know, there's other things, obviously, that you're apprised of that you need to bring before the Lord in prayer. Obviously, the needs of your family, those that you know, neighbors, perhaps even co-workers and folks that you know that are affected by this in various different ways. But listen, let us fight the good fight. Let us do our part because people are watching us. A whole army of Israelites were watching David. And you know what? When David had his victory, that encouraged the entire army to rise up and go to battle against the Philistines, and they were victorious. You know why? Because one guy had the faith to fight the battle for God, then a whole army of people followed in suit and pursuit. So who knows? People are watching you, and perhaps what you do in your fight against this battle will encourage others to join the battle as well. So God bless you, and come on back on Sunday morning. We'll see you on Sunday morning, Lord willing, at 10:30 a.m. and join us then. But until then, keep on praying and continue in the battle.